What happens when a successful district attorney discovers her estranged father, the man who threw her out as a homeless teenager, is running for governor while hiding decades of embezzlement from veterans' charities? I'm Sarah Martinez, and 12 years ago, I was sleeping in bus stations and eating from dumpsters because I dared to tell the truth about my family. Today, I hold the evidence that could destroy everything they've built on lies. But what I discovered about why my family really cut contact will shock you even more than the crimes I'm about to expose. Stick around because this confrontation, 12 years in the making, is about to get intense. I grew up in Paradise Valley, Arizona, where million-dollar homes sit like jewels against the desert mountains. Our Spanish-style mansion with its infinity pool and tennis court was the setting for countless charity fundraisers and political gatherings. My father, Miguel Rodriguez, was the golden boy of Phoenix politics, a self-made businessman who'd built a construction empire from nothing, served 2 terms as city councilman, and was preparing his run for governor. He was particularly passionate about veterans' causes, having lost his own father in Vietnam. His annual Heroes Fund gala raised hundreds of thousands for wounded warriors. My mother, Carmen, was the perfect political wife. Former beauty queen turned charity patron, she organized galas, served on hospital boards, and smiled beautifully at every campaign event. Isabella, 3 years younger than me, was their crown jewel honor roll student, debate team captain, destined for law school and a political dynasty marriage. Then there was me, Sarah Rodriguez, the family disappointment. While Isabella excelled at everything, I questioned everything. Why did Dad's construction projects always seem to go to his political allies? Why did Mom take so many headache pills that made her sleep through dinner? Why did our housekeeper Rosa look so sad when she thought no one was watching? At 14, I discovered why. I was homesick from school when Dad returned unexpectedly with Councilwoman Patricia Hayes. They didn't see me reading in the sunroom as they went upstairs together. When Mom came home hours later, I told her what I'd seen. The slap across my face was swift and sharp. "Never," she hissed, her perfect makeup streaking, "say anything like that again. Politics requires sacrifices you don't understand." But I did understand. I understood that our perfect family was performance art, and I was terrible at acting. The pattern repeated throughout high school. Dad would bring business associates home when Mom was out. Mom would increase her pill consumption. Isabella would throw herself deeper into achievements that earned their approval. And I would get labeled as difficult, dramatic, attention-seeking. The breaking point came at Isabella's quinceañera, a lavish celebration Dad threw to showcase his success to Phoenix's elite. The governor attended, senators, major donors, military heroes Dad claimed to support. During the dinner, I watched him charm Colonel Martinez, a decorated veteran who ran a nonprofit for amputee soldiers. Dad pledged $50,000 on the spot, the crowd applauding his generosity. Later, helping clean up, I overheard him on the phone with his accountant. "Move the money from the Veterans Emergency Fund back to the main account. The check will bounce, but by then the photo op will be in tomorrow's paper." Something inside me snapped. This wasn't just infidelity, he was stealing from wounded soldiers while campaigning on their sacrifices. At the end of the party, when Dad asked for final toasts, I stood up. The room fell silent. Dad's difficult daughter didn't usually speak. At family events, "I'd like to toast my father," I began, my voice carrying clearly across the ballroom. "A man who publicly pledges money to veterans' charities while privately moving those funds back to his personal accounts. A man who claims to honor our military heroes while robbing them blind." The silence was deafening. Dad's face cycled through shock, rage, and calculation in seconds. "Sarah's had too much champagne," he announced smoothly, his political training kicking in. "Kids say the darndest things when they've been partying." But I wasn't done. "Check your bank records, Colonel Martinez. See if that $50,000 clears. Then ask my father about the other pledges he's made over the years." That night, back home, the explosion was nuclear. Dad paced our marble kitchen like a caged animal while Mom sat frozen at the island, her hands shaking around her wine glass. Isabella stood in the doorway, tears streaming down her face. "You ungrateful little brat," Dad roared. "Do you have any idea what you've done? Do you have any idea what you've done? Colonel Martinez has connections throughout the military community. If he starts asking questions, good," I shot back. "Maybe he'll find out what you really are. What I really am." Dad's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. "I'm the man who built this empire from nothing, Who pulled this family up from poverty? Who gives you everything you have? By stealing from veterans who lost limbs serving our country. The backhanded slap sent me stumbling against the counter. When I looked up, his eyes were cold in a way I'd never seen. You have two choices, he said, his political composure returning. You can apologize to everyone tomorrow, admit you were drunk and confused, and never speak of family business again. Or you can get out and stay out. I looked at Mom, silently begging for support. She stared into her wine glass. I looked at Isabella. Isa, please. You know I'm telling the truth. Isabella's voice broke as she spoke. Why do you always have to ruin everything? This was supposed to be my special day, and you turned it into a disaster. All you care about is drama and attention. The betrayal cut deeper than Dad's slap. Fine, I whispered. I'll leave. I packed a duffel bag with clothes, my few precious belongings, and photos of better times. Dad watched from my doorway as I gathered my things. Your credit cards are canceled, he informed me coldly. Your car stays here, it's in my name. Here's $300. It's more than you deserve. I walked out into the desert night, 16 years old with $300 and a bag of clothes. No one followed me. The first year was brutal. Phoenix summers are merciless when you're living on the streets. I slept in 24-hour laundromats, public libraries, under highway overpasses. I ate from fast food dumpsters and learned which churches served free meals. I worked dishwashing jobs that paid cash, slept in shelters when beds were available, and discovered that $300 disappears fast when it's all you have. Not once did anyone from my family contact me. It was as if Sarah Rodriguez had died on her 16th birthday. Rock bottom came 8 months after leaving home. I was fired from my job at a gas station after falling asleep during a shift I hadn't slept in 36 hours. That night, huddled behind a strip mall dumpster in 110-degree heat, I made myself a promise. I would survive, I would succeed, and someday I would make Miguel Rodriguez answer for his crimes. The next morning, I walked into Phoenix Community College and talked to a counselor. With my solid grades and compelling personal story, I qualified for emergency financial aid and work-study programs. I found a tiny studio apartment I could afford with my part-time campus jobs, lived on ramen and peanut butter sandwiches, and threw myself into my studies. Political science and criminal justice became my obsessions. I studied every aspect of political corruption, charity fraud, and white-collar crime. Professor Jennifer Walsh, who taught constitutional law, became my mentor. You have fire in your belly, she observed after I'd earned the highest grade on a particularly difficult exam. But you look exhausted. What's driving you? I found myself telling her everything: the family, the betrayal, the streets. Instead of pity, her eyes showed respect. I grew up in foster care, she revealed. Aged out at 18 with nothing. Look at me now, tenured professor, published author, consultant for the state attorney general's office. Fire can destroy you or forge you into something stronger. With her guidance, I transferred to Arizona State with a full academic scholarship, then earned acceptance to their law school with a partial fellowship. I worked 3 jobs: research assistant, weekend bartender, freelance paralegal. But for the first time since leaving home, I was building something real. Law school was where I found my calling. Criminal prosecution, specifically white-collar crime and public corruption. My professors noted my particular intensity when studying charity fraud cases. You argue these cases like they're personal, one commented. They are personal, I replied. Every stolen dollar represents someone who needed help and didn't get it. After graduation, I was hired by the Maricopa County District Attorney's Office. I started in misdemeanors but quickly proved myself on complex financial cases. My colleagues dubbed me the closer for my conviction rate on seemingly impossible cases. By age 28, I was senior assistant district attorney, leading the public integrity unit. I had a sleek apartment in downtown Phoenix, a wardrobe of professional suits, and the respect of my peers. The scared, homeless teenager was gone, replaced by a prosecutor who made corrupt officials tremble. Then came the case that would change everything. Sarah, we need you on Operation Clean Slate, announced District Attorney Michael Chen, dropping a thick file on my desk. Massive charity fraud ring operating throughout Arizona. Military nonprofits, children's hospitals, disaster relief funds. They've been skimming millions. I nodded, already flipping through preliminary reports. Who's the primary target? Phoenix businessman Miguel Rodriguez. He's raised millions for various charities over the past decade, but our forensic accountants found significant discrepancies. Money pledged publicly but never delivered, funds diverted to shell companies, kickbacks from contractors. The file slipped from my hands, papers cascading across my office floor. Da Chen knelt to help me gather them. You all right? You look like you've seen a ghost. I'm fine, I managed, staring at my father's campaign photo attached to the investigation summary. Just surprised. I know his reputation. Well, that reputation might be built on theft from veterans, sick children, and disaster victims. We need to build an airtight case before the governor's race heats up. Any politician this connected will have the best lawyers money can buy. That night, I stared at the case files spread across my dining table. 12 years had aged my father more gray at his temples, deeper lines around his eyes, but the same confident smile that had charmed voters and victims alike. According to our investigation, his charity fraud had expanded dramatically since I left. The Heroes Fund, Children's Hospital Drive, Hurricane Relief Foundation, all sophisticated money laundering operations. Conservative estimates suggested he'd stolen over $2 million intended for the most vulnerable populations. While publicly campaigning as their champion, my first instinct was to recuse myself due to conflict of interest. But as I read victim impact statements, veterans who couldn't afford prosthetics, children denied critical surgeries, families left homeless after disasters, my resolve hardened. Who better to prosecute Miguel Rodriguez than the daughter who knew exactly how calculating and ruthless he could be? For 6 months, I led the investigation while keeping my connection secret. I interviewed donors who thought their money was helping heroes. I traced funds through labyrinthine shell company structures. I built relationships with federal agents tracking similar schemes in other states. The evidence was overwhelming. Dad had perfected charity fraud as an art form: big public pledges for photo opportunities, followed by quiet withdrawals once media attention faded. Victims were chosen specifically because they were sympathetic but powerless. Who would challenge a war heroes charity? Who would audit a children's hospital fund? Most sickening were the construction contracts. Dad would pledge to build housing for homeless veterans, then hire his own company at inflated rates using charity funds. The houses were built cheaply, the excess money diverted to personal accounts. Veterans living in substandard housing paid for with their own donated support. As I assembled the final case file, an elegant invitation arrived at my office. Isabella Rodriguez Hayes requests your presence at her engagement celebration to James Caldwell III. The party would be held at the Arizona Biltmore, Phoenix's most exclusive resort. Attached was a handwritten note. Sarah, I know we have history, but I want my sister at this celebration. Please come. We need to talk. Love Isapare. I stared at the invitation for hours. How had they found me? I'd legally changed my name to Sarah Martinez using my maternal grandmother's maiden name specifically to avoid association with the Rodriguez family. My address was unlisted, my social media non-existent. The timing seemed too convenient. Just as I'd completed a career-defining investigation into my father, the door to my past swung open. For 3 days, the invitation sat on my kitchen counter. Each morning I'd stare at it over coffee, remembering Isabella's tears as she called me dramatic and attention-seeking, remembering my father's cold eyes as he erased me from the family, remembering my mother's silence. On the 4th day, I called Professor Walsh, now a close friend despite the age difference. This is quite the ethical dilemma, she said after I explained everything over dinner. Professionally, you probably should have recused yourself when you recognized your father's name. I nodded, shame washing over me. I know, but the evidence would have been discovered regardless of who led the investigation. True. The question now is what you want to accomplish by attending this party. I thought carefully before answering. Closure, justice, and maybe I want them to see who I became despite everything they put me through. That night, I made my decision. I would attend the party, not for reconciliation, but for truth. I would bring copies of key evidence, but make my decision about exposing it based on how the reunion unfolded. I informed Da Chen about my personal connection to Miguel Rodriguez, preparing to be removed from the case. This could complicate prosecution, he said, studying me carefully. Defense attorneys will claim bias, vendetta, family drama. The evidence stands independently, I insisted. Every document is authenticated, every witness statement corroborated. My connection doesn't change the facts. After long discussion, we reached an agreement. The investigation would continue with another prosecutor taking lead. I could attend the party as Sarah Martinez, not as a law enforcement officer. Any personal confrontation was separate from our official case. We're probably 2 weeks from having enough for an arrest warrant, Chen said. Whatever you decide to do at this party, remember that justice will come either way. The next evening, I drove to the Arizona Biltmore. The resort's iconic architecture glowed against the desert sunset, palm trees and mountain views creating a backdrop for Phoenix's elite gathering. Valets took keys to Mercedes and BMWs while guests in designer gowns and tailored suits streamed toward the ballroom. Name please? Asked a young man with a tablet at the entrance. Sarah Rodriguez. His eyes widened slightly. Oh, Miss Rodriguez, you're on the VIP list. Miss Isabella left specific instructions. He signaled to an older woman who approached immediately. Miss Rodriguez, I'm Patricia, the event coordinator. The bride-to-be asked that you be escorted directly to her when you arrived. The ballroom was spectacular: crystal chandeliers, desert flowers, a string quartet playing softly. As I mingled anonymously, I observed the guest list: Governor Martinez, Senator Caldwell, military officials, construction company executives, charity board members. The same crowd that had attended my family's events 12 years ago, now grayer, but still powerful. At the bar, I ordered a club soda and studied the room. My parents were holding court near the windows, Dad in an obviously custom tuxedo, Mom elegant in silver silk. Isabella looked radiant in a cocktail dress, her fiancé handsome and attentive at her side. They looked like the perfect family they'd always pretended to be. In the marble-appointed ladies' lounge, I splashed cold water on my wrists, a calming technique Professor Walsh had taught me. The door opened, and in the mirror I saw my mother enter. Carmen Rodriguez froze, her hand still on the door handle. She had aged more than I expected, thinner, frailer, her once vibrant black hair now silver. For a moment, shock registered openly on her face. Then, like putting on a mask, she composed herself. Sarah, you came. Isabella asked me to, I replied, turning to face her directly. She'll be so happy. Mom approached carefully, as if I might bolt. You look wonderful. Successful. I am successful. Senior Prosecutor, Maricopa County DA's office. Pride flickered in her eyes before uncertainty replaced it. Your father will be surprised to see you. I'm counting on it. Something in my tone made her flinch. Sarah, I know things ended badly, but this is Isabella's special night. Let's not make a scene. The familiar refrain of my childhood. Don't embarrass the family. Keep secrets. Maintain appearances. Following an impulse, I made my way toward the bridal party area. Isabella was holding court with her bridesmaids, all women. I didn't recognize her. Life had moved on completely without me. When she saw me, her champagne glass froze halfway to her lips. Sarah, she whispered. Why did you invite me, Isabella? After 12 years of silence, she gestured to a velvet settee, carefully arranging her dress as she sat. It wasn't 12 years of silence on my part, Sarah. I tried to find you. I raised an eyebrow, skeptical. The first 2 years, I hired a private investigator with money I saved from my job. Dad found out and threatened to cut off my college tuition if I continued. You never called, never emailed. I sent letters to your old friends' addresses, tried reaching you through social media before you disappeared completely. She twisted her hands in her lap. When those didn't work, I realized you'd cut all ties to your old life. I studied her face, looking for deception. So this invitation is about what? Guilt? Partly, she admitted, but also because I'm marrying into a political family, and James and I want to start our marriage honestly. Having this estrangement hanging over us felt wrong. So it is about appearances. No, her eyes flashed with hurt. It's about me wanting my sister back before I start this new chapter. It's about regret over how I treated you when we were younger. I felt my carefully constructed defenses wavering. You chose them over me, Isapare. When I needed you most, you called me dramatic and attention-seeking. I was 18 years old and terrified, she replied, tears welling. I didn't understand what I was seeing, and I couldn't imagine Dad doing something so wrong. I was a coward, Sarah. I've regretted it every day since. Before I could respond, someone knocked on the door. 5 minutes until we need the bride for photos, called the coordinator. Isabella stood, smoothing her dress. Will you stay for dinner, please? There's more I need to tell you. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. I was so distracted that I nearly collided with my father as I rounded a corner. Miguel Rodriguez looked older but still commanding, silver hair perfectly styled, his tuxedo obviously tailored, his posture military straight. When he recognized me, his expression cycled rapidly through shock, anger, and political calculation. Sarah, he said, his voice controlled. What are you doing here? I was invited by Isabella. His jaw tightened. Without consulting me. It's her engagement party, not your campaign event. He glanced around, noting nearby guests who were trying not to stare at our tense exchange. We should discuss this privately. Nothing to discuss. I'm here for dinner, then I'm gone. Why now? He demanded in a harsh whisper. After all this time? Maybe I miss my family, I suggested, my tone making clear I didn't. His eyes narrowed. What do you want? Nothing from you. I want to celebrate my sister's engagement. At the mention of Isabella's celebration, my father's expression shifted. Fear flickered behind his eyes. Whatever you're planning, don't. This event is important for connections that go beyond our family. Connections. Always the politician. He stepped closer, his voice dropping further. I built this family's reputation from nothing. Don't destroy it out of spite. Spite? I repeated. Is that what you call seeking justice? Dinner was an exercise in forced civility. I was seated between Isabella and our cousin Marco, directly across from my parents. Dad played his role perfectly, the proud father celebrating his daughter's engagement to the son of a prominent political family. His toast was eloquent, speaking about family values and the bright future Isabella and James would build together. With each hypocritical word, my resolve strengthened. Throughout the meal, I noticed Dad watching me nervously while speaking with other guests. Twice Mom started to say something to me, then stopped. The tension was palpable beneath the polite dinner conversation. So Sarah, James Caldwell Seoster, addressed me directly. Isabella tells us you're an attorney. Impressive career path. Thank you, Senator. I specialize in public corruption cases. Dad choked slightly on his wine. Fascinating area. The senator continued, oblivious to my father's discomfort. Any interesting cases you can share? Actually, I recently completed a major investigation into charity fraud, I replied, looking directly at my father. A businessman who raised millions for veterans and children's hospitals while diverting funds to personal accounts. Dad's knuckles whitened around his fork. Mom looked confused. Sounds like important work, James JRB commented. Protecting vulnerable populations from exploitation. That's exactly how I see it. No one should profit from others' suffering. Before the conversation could continue, the event coordinator announced it was time for final toasts. Dad stood, straightening his jacket, and walked to the microphone. When he finished to appreciative applause, the coordinator consulted her list. Next, we'll hear from the maid of honor. I stood up. Actually, I'd like to say something. The coordinator looked flustered. You're not on the program. I'm the bride's sister, I said firmly. Surely that counts for something. From the head table, Isabella gave a small nod. The coordinator reluctantly gestured toward the microphone. The room fell silent as I approached the front. My father remained standing beside the stage, his expression a warning. Mom looked terrified. The Caldwells watched with polite interest. Unaware of the storm approaching, I took the microphone, surveying the room filled with Arizona's elite politicians, business leaders, charity board members, people who had attended our family events for years. For those who don't know me, I'm Sarah Rodriguez, Isabella's older sister. I paused, letting my gaze sweep across the curious faces. Some of you might wonder where I've been for the past 12 years, since I haven't been present at family functions. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. 12 years ago, I was given an ultimatum by my father. Keep quiet about his criminal activities, or leave and never return. I chose integrity over comfort, truth over family loyalty. Gasps erupted throughout the ballroom. Dad stepped forward, but I continued before he could interrupt. For the first year, I was homeless. I slept in shelters, worked minimum wage jobs, and eventually put myself through law school while working 3 jobs. Not once during that time did my family check if I was alive or dead. Isabella was crying now, James holding her hand tightly. Mom had her face in her hands. Dad was frantically signaling to Porter. Through determination and the kindness of strangers who became my real family, I graduated from ASU Law and became a senior prosecutor specializing in public corruption. I opened the portfolio I had brought to the podium, which brings me to why I accepted Isabella's invitation. 6 months ago, I was assigned to investigate massive charity fraud targeting Arizona's most vulnerable populations. The primary suspect, Miguel Rodriguez, who has spent years stealing from veterans, children's hospitals, and disaster relief funds while publicly campaigning as their champion. The room erupted in shocked exclamations. Senator Caldwell stood abruptly, his face ashen. Dad lunged toward the stage, but 2 security officers blocked his path. I have documentation showing that over the past decade, my father has stolen over $2 million intended for wounded veterans, sick children, and disaster victims. I held up several documents, bank records showing diversions through shell companies, testimony from victims who never received promised aid, contracts showing inflated billing to his own construction company using charity funds. She's lying, Dad shouted. This is revenge from an unstable daughter who abandoned her family. Actually, I have authenticated evidence, I replied calmly, and the district attorney's office has been building an independent case. As if on cue, the ballroom doors opened and Da Chen entered with 2 investigators and FBI agents. They hadn't been part of my plan, but apparently they'd been monitoring the situation. Miguel Rodriguez, Da Chen announced, you're under arrest for charity fraud, theft, and criminal violation of public trust. Chaos erupted. Guests stood, phones capturing the unprecedented scene. The Caldwells huddled together, security surrounding them. Dad was handcuffed, still protesting his innocence and demanding his attorney. Through the commotion, I noticed Mom collapse into her chair, a guest calling for medical assistance. Isabella pushed through the crowd toward me, her engagement dress billowing around her. How could you? She cried, reaching the podium. Tonight of all nights. But there was something unexpected in her expression, not just anger, but relief. As if a burden had been lifted. You suspected, I realized. You knew something was wrong. She looked away. I had concerns. Comments Dad made that didn't add up, but I never imagined this scale. In a quiet side room, Mom lay on a sofa, an oxygen mask over her face. She looked fragile, older than her 58 years. When she saw us enter together, she removed the mask with shaking hands. My girls, she whispered. Together again. Isabella knelt beside her, still in her engagement dress. Mom, save your strength. No, Mom's voice was surprisingly firm. I need to say this while I can. She looked at me. Sarah, I knew about the money problems, the affairs, not everything, but enough. I was a coward. The pills made it easier to pretend. Tears streamed down my face. Why didn't you support me that night? Fear, she admitted. Your father controlled everything, the money, the house, our standing in the community. And I was already sick then, early symptoms I ignored. She took a labored breath. I've regretted my silence every day since you left. She turned to Isabella. And you, my perfect daughter who followed all the rules. I watched you become what? I was trapped in a life of appearances. As paramedics prepared to transport Mom to the hospital, she grabbed my hand with surprising strength. The letters, she whispered, in my jewelry box at home. I kept them from you both. The day after the engagement party made every newspaper in Arizona. Headlines ranged from Rodriguez arrested at daughter's party to charity fraud scandal. Rock's governor's race. My name appeared in several articles, identified as both the estranged daughter and the prosecutor who had helped build the case. Isabella called as I was driving back to my apartment. The Caldwells are in full crisis mode, she said, her voice hoarse from crying. James's father has his entire campaign team working on distancing themselves from Dad. They want me to sign a statement condemning him and expressing shock at his alleged crimes. Can we meet? I went to the house this morning while Mom was in the hospital. I found her jewelry box. 3 hours later, we sat in my apartment, a wooden jewelry box between us on my coffee table. Isabella looked exhausted, still wearing yesterday's clothes, her engagement ring conspicuously absent. Inside were dozens of envelopes, organized chronologically with rubber bands. The first bundle was addressed to me in Isabella's handwriting, postmarked weekly for the first 2 years after I left. The second bundle contained letters from Mom to me, never sent. The third bundle held letters addressed to Isabella in my handwriting. I never received these, Isabella said, holding up letters I had written her during my early years away. I Wrote to you every week that first year, I said. When nothing came back, I assumed you didn't care. I wrote you too. For 2 years until I convinced myself you'd moved on completely. We spent hours reading the intercepted correspondence. Isabella's letters were filled with apologies, updates about her life, pleas for me to come home. My letters contained my struggles, small victories, and eventually news about college and law school. Mom's unsent letters revealed her private, torment knowledge of Dad's crimes, her addiction to prescription drugs, her regret at not standing up for me. She kept these from both of us, I said, anger and grief competing in my chest. She let us believe we had abandoned each other. But why? Isabella asked, wiping tears. Control, I suggested. Dad's control over her, over the family narrative. If we reconnected, his version of events might be challenged. Over the following weeks, a new rhythm emerged. Isabella chose to break from the Caldwells despite their legal threats, officially. Moving into my guest room, she found work at a local art gallery, finally pursuing interests Dad had deemed unworthy. Mom improved enough to move to a rehabilitation facility, where Isabella and I visited daily. Dad remained in jail, denied bail due to flight risk. The media attention was intense initially, but other scandals eventually drew focus elsewhere. Isabella struggled with her new reality, from politician's daughter to scandal-adjacent civilian, from wealthy socialite to working professional. But she also showed remarkable resilience. I always wanted to work in the art world, she confessed one evening over takeout. But Dad insisted it wasn't Rodriguez worthy. What else did you want that you didn't pursue because of him? She thought carefully. Travel that wasn't just luxury resorts. Friends who weren't socially advantageous. A relationship based on love rather than appropriate pedigree. She smiled sadly. I was the good daughter who stayed, but you were freer. By leaving, 1 month after the engagement party, we received word that Dad wanted to see us. Against my better judgment, I agreed to accompany Isabella to the county jail. Miguel Rodriguez had aged dramatically, his designer clothes replaced by jail scrubs, his commanding presence diminished by confinement. He still attempted to control the conversation from the moment we sat across from him. This case will be thrown out, he began, without greeting. My attorney is filing motions to suppress evidence obtained under false pretenses by a family member with a vendetta. The DA built their case independently, I reminded him. My investigation was just the starting point. He dismissed this with a wave. I need you both to make statements supporting me. Character witnesses. Family solidarity. Isabella and I exchanged glances. That's why you wanted to see us? She asked. Not to apologize or explain. There's nothing to apologize for. Everything I did was for this family, to give you the life you deserved. By stealing from wounded veterans, I challenged. By building wealth that could support our lifestyle. Business is business, Sarah. People suffered because of your crimes, Dad, Isabella said quietly. We left after 30 minutes, having refused his demands for support. In the parking lot, Isabella broke down. He's still trying to control us, she sobbed. Still can't admit he was wrong. 6 months after Isabella's engagement party became a federal arrest, autumn painted the desert mountains surrounding Phoenix in gold and crimson. On my desk sat a framed photo of Isabella and me at the Desert Botanical Garden, our arms around each other, genuine smiles on our faces. Dad's trial was scheduled for January. The prosecution had built an overwhelming case, financial records, victim testimonies, cooperating witnesses from his organization. His attorney attempted to have my involvement used to suppress evidence, but the judge ruled that the DA's independent work was admissible regardless of how the case originated. Dad refused plea deals, maintaining innocence despite mounting evidence. His business empire had crumbled, assets frozen, reputation destroyed. Mom's health had stabilized somewhat, though her struggles with prescription drug dependency required ongoing treatment. She had moved to a sober living facility, where Isabella and I visited regularly. Isabella had thrived in her new independence. Her gallery job had evolved into assistant manager, her natural eye for art finally finding productive application. She had started dating a museum curator for love, not social advancement. On a clear December morning, the call I'd been expecting came. Isabella's voice was steady but emotional. Dad took a plea deal. 15 years, full restitution to victims. Cooperation with federal investigators tracking similar schemes in other states. The trial I'd been dreading was over before it began. Justice served. but not in the dramatic courtroom confrontation I'd imagined. That evening, we established a new family tradition: Sunday dinners at my apartment with Professor Walsh and a rotating group of friends who had supported us through the ordeal. These gatherings became our chosen family, bound by loyalty and honesty rather than obligation and appearances. One Sunday evening, as winter settled over the desert, Isabella raised her glass for a toast. To Sarah, she said, who had the courage to leave and the strength to return, who chose truth over comfort and justice over silence. To both of you, Professor Walsh added, for rebuilding what was broken on a foundation of honesty this time. Later that night, after everyone had left, Isabella helped me clean dishes in comfortable silence, a testament to our reconnection. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't left that night? She asked. Sometimes, I admitted, but I wouldn't have become who I am. And I wouldn't have become who I am now, she nodded. Though it took losing everything to find myself. Not everything, I corrected, bumping her shoulder affectionately. You still have me. The Rodriguez family as it once existed was gone. The facade of perfection shattered, the patriarch imprisoned, the wealth dispersed to victims. But from those ruins, something more authentic had emerged, a relationship between sisters based on honesty, a chosen family built on genuine connection, and the freedom that comes with living in truth. I still visit Dad occasionally at the federal prison in Florence. Our conversations remain difficult, his ability to accept responsibility limited by defensive walls built over decades. But we're both trying, in our imperfect ways, to understand each other. The journey from that night, 12 years ago when I left home with $300 to today has been longer and stranger than I could have imagined. The justice I sought came at a high cost to everyone involved. The reunion with my sister brought both pain and healing. The truth about my family revealed complexities beyond the simple narrative I had constructed. If there's a lesson in all this, perhaps it's that family secrets inevitably surface, and the longer they're buried, the more damage they cause when revealed. Or maybe it's that true family stands by you through honesty, not convenience. Or simply that it's never too late to rebuild what was broken, if you're willing to start with truth. Has your family ever faced moments where truth and loyalty collided? Have you had to choose between keeping peace and speaking up? Your experiences matter, and I'd love to hear them in the comments below. If this story of family secrets and eventual justice resonated with you, please hit the like button so others might find it too. Subscribe for more real stories about family dynamics and the complicated journey toward healing.